Hello and welcome to the Fifth Element. Today we have with us Brianna Wonderland. She is a warm and nurturing healing facilitator and also a spiritual truth teller. We have in this conversation talk about the return of the goddesses culture and how to ignite your spiritual divine power. So without further ado, I leave you guys with this beautiful conversation full of wisdom and for you guys to enjoy. And you know what to do. If you like it, just press your like. And if you want, also, you can leave a comment so we can grow and learn together. Thank you so much. And I see you soon. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me and everybody for listening. It's beautiful. Thank you, Christina.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that I'm very drawn to you, besides your playfulness energy that you have, um, is that these last 2 years, you've been like bringing a lot of knowledge with all these summits that you have done,
Mm-hmm.
and the more that I start to look at you, you work a lot with the feminine,
Mm,
with the divine feminine.
yeah.
And then there was something that I was reading that you said that you're working on this rebirth of the goddess. And
Mm.
I would like if you can tell us about it, about what it is, the rebirth of goddess, what is so important now, and yeah, and how you experience it.
Thank you. That's a beautiful question. There's a lot of layers in that question for me.
Mhm.
There's like a historical layer, right,
Mhm.
where uh, cultures around the world, indigenous cultures or more ancient cultures related to the divine feminine and related to the goddess, right, as a spiritual source. And the divine mother as a spiritual source. We can see that still in Christianity, like the divine mother, Mother Mary. However, she often gets overlooked, or Mary Magdalene, the partner of Yeshua, often has historically been suppressed in her greatness as a counterpart to Yeshua. And so bringing back that feminine
Mm.
is bringing back both that place of women, honoring women as spiritual channels, and bringing, because we're in a huge historical time of women's empowerment, but also honoring us as spiritual vehicles as well, and our bodies as spiritual vehicles, right? We are the source of where life actually gestates and is held and is contained and then is brought into the world through our bodies, which is magical. And that is both a physical process and an energy and a spiritual process. Like literally we are the gateway for creation to move through. And so to empower women to be that gateway for creation to move through, I get goosebumps. It's like everything. It's just this way that we can feel our own power, because there is so much power in that, and that power has been suppressed, because it is the ultimate power in a way,
Mhm.
to bring creation through you and that energy of creation through you. um, mm.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
honoring ourselves as women for that creational power, and um, bringing it into the world in a time where we need to recreate the world and the way that we have created our society, the way that we have decimated the earth, the way that we are not living in harmony with each other, with our own natures as humans. It doesn't matter if you're man or woman, we're living out of balance with our own natures as human beings,
Mhm.
with our own natures as emotional, physical, heart-centered beings that aren't just in the mind, like running around like little cogs in a machine. And so bringing that balance back is also part of that. Bringing back the goddess is bringing back all of those layers in harmony with each other,
Mhm.
and honoring that is, the natural world is singing to us all the time, and that divine force of creation is moving through us all the time, and that we can see that everywhere and live and breathe it, and we are, and to be in relationship with each other in that way.
And wow, that's beautiful. and the thing is that what I'm listening is that, for centuries we've been oppressed and not, there were some parts of like some sisterhoods and, areas that women were still like, they were honoring, and it was kind of very sacred, and they were like, kill some of them, and very, very, and the other ones really like you don't know about them. And while I'm listening to you is that you're talking about this bringing the balance, no, that and this is part of your work, no?
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of part of your work and I imagine that in your work is everybody's welcome, but mostly you're working with women and what also women, you're working with the womb, no, the creation. But what about, when I'm listening to this, it's like, what about the women that they don't have the womb? All that. So yeah,
Still invited, because even so, it's an energetic principle. So when I'm talking about it, there's that physicality to it. But even if you don't have a womb, or some of your ovaries have been taken out, or you've had breasts, whatever, you were still chose to be in the body of a woman and chose to carry that energy, because the energy comes first. Like first we're created from our spiritual blueprint, and then the physical gets created. So even if you take the physical away, we still have that energetic blueprint, and we still have that energy, and men have these energies too, tap into them in their own ways. I just am a woman, so that's how I can relate to it, and that's how I can bring that relationship to other women in that way. And so they can still relate to bringing it. So in my meditations that I lead, I usually say, depending on the group, depending on how well I know the group, if some people don't have had a hysterectomy or have had other things like that, that tap into the energy of that place, because it's still there.
And yes, and then the other question that is coming is like this balancing of like, bringing into awareness more of this, bring to awareness the female energy, that has been suppressed. And there's also, the work comes here of, it's not that it dangers, but there's a lot of force of like people like, okay, let's bring it on. That we're talking here about a balance, no? When and how do you do when there's all this movement of people that they're not very clear about what it is bringing the, like when I talk about this with my brothers, for example, no, or with men and with some women, they are like, you guys are, they don't understand what it means bringing the energy of the female, but in a balance too. So can you tell us a little bit more about what it is to live in a balance, how you nurture that part that is like, okay, there's the feminine here, and there's also, like you said, we have feminine and male energies in us. How could we bring this, if we are exploring, if we are being in this body that is woman, that is a female, how can we bring these two energies into a balance?
Yeah. Well, like you already said, and like we've both been trained, because we have the same training in psychic ways.
Totally, but not everybody here that they're listening. So
just letting everybody know, we have the same psychic training, clairvoyant training. And in that, right, everybody has masculine and feminine energy running through them. And so bringing that into balance, and as a woman or as a man, you will most likely, unless you're part of LGBTQ or you identify more with your masculine or feminine, depending on your body, it doesn't, it's not necessarily this way. It just, in many people, probably majority of people who aren't two-spirit or who don't, have as a woman. So my general, we could say it as a percentage, right? My natural inclination is to run my feminine energy at 60%, my masculine energy at 40%. I can run them 50-50 if I want, like I can. And what we mean by run is mean that those energies are moving, they're always running, they're always circulating in our bodies, and they're always merging. And that's how we're creating unity. We're creating unity all the time through that way. And it might be imbalanced through our relationship with the masculine or the feminine, with those energies through our lifetime and through other lifetimes. And so to balance them means to honor them both equally and to move whatever blocks we have so that they can, balance each other well. And so if I'm giving a woman a reading, a psychic reading or an energy healing on their feminine energy, it might be that I have to look at the masculine energy first, and like, how are you running your masculine energy? How are you relating to that? And how is that balanced with the feminine? It depends on the person. Everybody is different. And then in the world, right, coming into balance with men means we honor men as well as we honor ourselves. And we can't, and there's a lot of, because women have been oppressed, and a lot of this is working on our own empowerment. The reason why we're working on ourselves first is to find that sense of power and balance in ourselves, so we're not always feeling victimized, or we're not always reacting against, or we're not always pushing against, or feeling ourselves less than, even, or whatever we might be feeling about it, so that we can be solid here and then relate to other men or whoever of whatever in a way that is in harmony. So it's just really about coming in harmony within ourselves, and then that relates to the world, right? Becoming in balance with the world. And one of those major imbalances is our imbalance with nature. And a lot of people or traditions refer to that as the divine feminine, because it's like the growth energy, the creation energy that is just moving through everything. And that is often identified with women's bodies. Not necessarily, it depends on the tradition. They're all different. But getting in balance with that creational force, however we do it, and recognizing that it's everywhere and that source of energy is everywhere, and coming into balance with it means opening ourselves to how the world really works in a natural system, which we have gone away from.
Curious about the spark of the divine, that spark, how we can tap into it, how we can nurture. How do you see it? Can you tell me about it, please?
The spark of divine within ourselves, or the spark of this feminine power through pleasure?
The spark of the divine feminine power, and then how you got into that, but obviously from your spark.
I'm just feeling into that question in the moment, like, how do I ignite that spark? Well, the spark is always there, but we can have dampened it, right? It's because there's been a lot of suppression of pleasure. Pleasure is, shameful. It's not okay to go around and just be like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And I'm kind of a bliss being naturally, so I've always wanted to do that. Like,
it feels good when you say that. It's like, oh yeah.
Right? Like when I was a little kid, I always wanted to go into the store and touch everything, and my mom is like, don't do that. Well, that's in a way, she's doing that because societal norms and everything like that. But it's also a suppression of like my pleasure of how I'm interacting with my environment in that moment. And so it's like we dampen it often. It's like, it's not okay to act this way. It's not okay to act this blissful, right? And immediately I feel my heart chakra like close when someone tells me that, right? Versus being like, wow, being in affinity with everything, being in that dance of that creational spark, and enjoying the form that has arisen as that creational spark has moved into everything, because everything exists as a form of that creational spark. So we can enjoy and take pleasure in everything that exists. And so that's how you keep adding fire to that spark, as you keep enjoying everything and enjoying your own body and how that has, nurtured you. And it's not just a sexual thing, it's a sensual thing. Like, how do you get into your senses? How do you enjoy the world? How do you take each moment as this place of enjoyment, like food, nourishment? And when you do that, then your relationship changes to everything. And you don't want to overconsume. you know, which is what we're doing. We're over consuming. We overconsume often when we eat,
Everything.
or we under consume and we don't really nourish ourselves, you know,
Mm.
or we're over consuming the earth, you know, but it's all linked to also this not actually nourishing ourselves through the like pleasure of living.
Hmm. It sounds like what you were talking about, this capitalist, world that we live in, that is so like intense, or then like commodify, like, okay, now meditation, which, I love meditation, all that, but you have to do this, and it's kind of like taking the pleasure, like you were saying, the pleasure of like really being like, it's like open to the moment, to receiving, like it doesn't have to be sexual, but it's like open, and kind of that openness gives you the information of like how much, or how, because it's like when I listen to that, I'm like thinking also, oh, here come like, woo, open, 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 and then it's like boom, 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 go to the ground, that
Yeah,
can
that's why
happen
we
to.
also have to create safe spaces for that to occur in, you know, and being in nature is usually a safe space to do that in, because nature is just like living in that pleasure all the time. In one of those interviews I did with Susan Weed, she was just like, nature is sex. That's all nature is. It's sex all the time, you know?
I know, it's
Like the
amazing.
flowers' genitals are just showing, and that's what we think is beautiful, you know? It's true in a way.
That is so cool.
Yeah. And so it's just living in that pleasure of all
Mhm.
that's arising. And we do need to be um careful in what spaces, like I carefully craft my life in a way so that I can be open,
Mhm.
because that's my natural state and I love to be in it and I want to be in it. I want to live that way.
Yeah.
You know, but yes, the world, the systems that we've created in the world are not often conducive to holding us in that openness, which can be quite vulnerable, and
Mhm.
soft and tender. And so we do need to be careful of that. And one reason why I did the clairvoyant training that we both did was because I was too open, you know, and I
Mm.
needed to learn how to have better boundaries. And so now I can assess that in my environment way easier. And part of that is because of trauma, right? I couldn't assess that well.
Mhm.
So now, because a lot of that is healed in myself, I can assess how to have better boundaries with the world.
Yeah, and also when you're
And that's
talking
part of
that,
the masculine too, you might say, you know,
it's
like
kind of what?
kind of part of the masculine in a way. I was like
Mhm.
imbalanced in my masculine, like how to
Yeah.
like
Say no, yes,
doorway. Yeah.
Mhm. Feeling the thing, and it's like, no, this is not the direction, it's kind of more
Yeah.
clarity in that aspect. And it also reminds me like the work that you also do, you facilitate groups, no, women and or well, people.
Mhm.
And then for that is really important to create this vessel, no, of safetyness. And it's like when we get together, all of us, we are all so different from each other, no? It's like we are, I'm a tree, I'm a, you, you're like a plant or whatever, this is what I was thinking because of Susan Weed, what you just said. It's like we are all different, and nature is all different. It's not like the same, each plant is different. And
Mhm.
and I'm thinking about your circles, no, and how you create create this space with each individual in a way to feel safe. And also this I was listening to this beautiful meditation that you gave about the chalice and the well.
Mhm.
There's also this summit that
Mhm.
you created. Tell us about how you got with that chalice and the well, how they came to you, and the work that from there you've been noticing in your life, or in people. Because for me, for sure, it was a great summit, because it was a little bit of teaching, but then it was a lot of
Yeah.
experiment and tools. No, it was what a gift to the world that you brought. So Tell us about how do you got with that name, Chalice and Well. What does it mean? And yeah.
That was great. There was a few questions, so I just want to clarify which one you want first, because there was a thing about how to create safe spaces,
Yes.
and how about
So let's go to the creative safe spaces, and then we move into the chalice.
Yeah. So creating safe space is really about containment, and safety is really an inner perception, right? Most often. Yeah, there's the like, is a car going to come and I'm not going to cross the road in front of it, that's not safe. And a lot of times we have a lot of wounding, we've internalized a lot of stuff, and we can react to it negatively or whatever. And so before you get to some really deep work in a class, you want to help each person create containment within themselves. And so in psychic school, clairvoyant training that we did, Psychic Horizons does this really well, actually. And I use a lot of their tools. And but I also bring in the embodiment tools. So the meditation you mentioned, Chalice and the Well, which that's actually a great free gift. And anybody listening to this, I'll make that the free gift.
That would be great.
My interview that I did for Chalice and the Well, and I lead an experiential exercise in that. And that is a combination of some energy, meditation, and yoga nidra, which is more body being connection, being. And so that containment. So the first class in this class that I've been teaching recently is called Grace and Grounding, a training in sacred sisterhood. And the first class we had was about containment, was about your container, right? Your energy body container, but your physical body as your own boundaries, how you let things in and out of that boundary. And we actually spent the first 3 classes on that, basically. To get people
very important.
Yeah. Get people more solid in that. And then part of the training is all about that. So we have small groups where we meet, and there's a specific energy meditation that people do to get grounded, centered in their body together before they listen. And then we share together. And so we get grounded. So that's your container. You're grounded, connected to the earth. You're in your own sovereign space, your own energy, sovereignty, your own body. The boundaries of your body. You're not just like, woo, like this, like we were talking about. Like, it's like we can be open like that and have a container at the same time. And that's the trick of it, right? To be open and have a container. And that container really is just to assess information that's coming in and out, like you were saying, to assess like, oh, because in this, it might change in every moment. Oh, I can be really open in this moment. And then some other energy comes, and maybe I want to be more closed, or I want to let that through me, be transparent and just let it move through me, like, oh, that was somebody else's stuff, right? And that's the whole thing about creating safety, is always coming back to ourselves as the center point and allowing other people's things to stay in their center point, and for it to move through us, or to be also the other part I added to that was to give it to divine. So if you can't hold it, then you can just give it to Divine Mother, because she can hold everything. And that works all the time. I do that all the time.
It's like almost like the trees, when the wind comes or whatever, like the leaves. I'm just like, Susan Witt is very much right now in me. It's like, it's just like, oh, if somebody comes, woo,
yeah, exactly, like the wind in the trees. And that was exact guidance that I got from a spiritual teacher once. He was just like, just act like it's the wind and let it move through you, or the breeze to move by, and everything, exactly like the trees. And the wind moves it, they get moved, but they're not like, oh my God, you moved me. That's the part that is is when we react to the movement.
Yes.
You're like, oh wow, that moved. So, and part of that is maybe it touched on an open place in us that we haven't closed yet, So find those places that when that happens to you, you can know, oh, I have some work. I need to spend some time with myself to figure out what just got touched, and what kind of nurturance or healing or love do I need to give myself in that moment. Totally. And that's the other part of creating safety.
Yeah, that's what is so important. Like you were saying, that like first start with the inside, with here, because being the tree with the leaves and the wind to move is awesome, but there's a lot of wounds that we can go like, oh, and there's a mosquito here. Mosquito. I'm going a little bit crazy here. But anyway,
We're like the nature, we're going with the nature metaphors. Yeah.
go with the nature theme. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. And then you have a beautiful background there that I'm like, oh, it's sunny and beautiful. Like, I want to be there. Here
Mhm.
is foggy in San Francisco. When it's beautiful here too. But
Mm.
so yes, and the Chalice and the Well.
Mm.
Tell us about it.
Oh, yeah, that was a summit that I created. And the summits are a series of interviews with people. And this was an experiential summit. So it was, I did an interview with them, but then we also did a meditation time or an experiential exercise for part of that. And it goes out to the world for free for like the event time. And then people can purchase it if they like to purchase it.
But it's
And
not more, is it still there? Like people can purchase it or it's
I
gone?
can put a link to it so people
Because
could.
it's really, there's so much richness,
Yeah,
you
there was a
know.
lot of richness in that one. Yeah,
Totally.
amazing.
Yeah, and
Really amazing.
yes. But what I was curious is that, you know, the name at the beginning, when I was like, maybe because I'm not from United States, or not my language, but Chalice and the Well. And I said, well, what it gets to my mind is kind of like, even like the uterus, like the form like this and that, and is that, did it
Uh,
come that to you too, or not, that image?
well, I like to lead my life in a way that's driven by spirit and intuition,
Mm,
and so I have prayer time and I have time where I sit with myself to be guided.
yeah.
And that name came in my guidance, and I
Mm,
didn't know what it meant. And it was
mm,
like a discovery process with each person and how they interpreted that. And there
mm,
is a symbology about that, about the chalice being the container,
mm,
for life force in a way, or like the uterus, you could say,
mhm,
for that beautiful space of emptiness. And then that water that is life giving, because water is our life giving, and the feminine, like the water in a sense, and being held. And so having both the chalice and the well of eternal energy that is always moving through us and making our body and our self that vehicle, that chalice to hold that eternal well that wells up within us. And that is another kind of way to talk about that life force that I've been
mm,
about.
mhm. And that's why it was like, very much a life force, that summit, because it was like, you brought that there and everybody, boom, it came, and I was like, wow, Brianna, awesome. and then um and then what about your sisterhood, the you're almost going to be finishing with this 5-month training that you have, really connected with the cycles and
Mhm.
the moon, and wow, I think is wonderful, and to create a community, with people that are like connected to nature, to their body, and to each other, and
Mhm.
you guide them through that. Tell us a little bit about that experience so far, and are
Mm.
you going to create more, I imagine?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I hope to create more of them. Yeah, it's been really beautiful so far. It's been a smaller group of women.
Mhm.
And so we've all got to create that safety. And that was part of the purpose of having a smaller group of women, so that we could just feel really free to express however we needed to express. And so much wisdom. It's like creating that safe space and creating that place where women can tap into their own wisdom. And then what
Mm,
arises out of that is so beautiful. And that what arises out of that is also a knowing where we might need to pay more attention and love. And so each class we cultivate around that. And
mhm.
so yesterday I taught a class, and I teach it on the around the new and full moons, so that we're
Mm,
always on that cycle. And that's just to remind us of our cyclical nature. As women, we tap into that cyclical nature really potently around our menstrual cycle. Even if you're not menstruating, you went through that cycle.
yeah.
And the menstrual cycle is a beautiful thing. It's such a beautiful, I feel like it's such a beautiful, it's that rising of the potential of creation to be manifest. And we can see that in the new and full moons, right? At the full moon, creation is kind of like, woo, because we're getting the most sunlight. We're at, in a 24-hour period, we're getting the sun from the sun, and we're getting the sunlight reflected off the moon. So there's this fullness and harvesting and bigness, which is the cycle we're in right now. The full moon just happened. And then the new moon and the dark moon is like that coming in phase, and that phase of starting something new. And so honoring that those phases that we're always going through, and coming inward to that outward, and that it's this always this.
Yeah. It's like the movement of creation, really. Like when you have a baby, they have the contractions, boom, 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 and then boom. And I love it how you say it about the fullness, and the reflection of the sun. And it also feels, has the notes of like very like sexual, for me, that kind of reflection and fullness reflected in the moon and in our bodies. And for me, like I remember I was not very much in touch with my PMS, or like people were like, you must be having your period. And I was like, and I really, I am one of, a lot of my friends were like going through, emotions and whatever. I didn't particularly notice, and I was like, oh, I just suddenly I have it, and so I was not very aware of that cyclical. I mean, I knew that every 28 days, boom, it came, and also can be a trauma, no? That there's like this disconnection of that coming into the earth, I mean, the way that it came, it was like, and then it's like still not connected. One of the things that our school, the psychic school, helped me is really the importance of grounding, of grounding and being here. And there's a lot of like talk these days, and in meditations that comes this grounding. It's like, okay, let's ground, and I practice that. I practice sometimes when I'm in the airplane, because in the airplanes I go like, ooh, I don't feel the ground.
Totally. Yeah.
It's intense.
It is intense. Yeah, we did that. So it's, and it's particularly potent for women to ground, and when I mean, that's usually the first thing we do in class is ground together. And it's just like the energy drops. Now we're at a place where people have practiced enough where it's like, it's not such a huge difference, where it was in the beginning of like, oh, wow, we grounded. Now I can really feel everybody settle into themselves.
Yeah. Don't you think like maybe like I'm thinking about this oppression and of women's bodies for so long, that there was this kind of mechanism not to not being like so present in your body, just kind of a protection. Because you were saying like for women it's very important to ground, no? I mean, for everybody obviously, but I see that in my practice too, how with women, the importance of like if it's feeling safe, no? And
exactly.
the way of not being feeling safe in your body, and in the present time, in the present moment. And it's kind of like, it's okay. And to have a support system too, no? Like these circles that you provide, circles of women, or getting together with a community with that awareness, no? That everything is welcome. You are welcome here because you are here in this earth, no?
Right, exactly. And that's the point. Like, I mean, there's two factors to that. One is the earth is the biggest container we have, right? Because it's what's holding us to be here, and we're in its atmosphere where, it is our, and a lot of people speak of it as our mother, or our father. Other people, other traditions, depends on the tradition, but it's really feeling that containment and that safety and security, and feeling welcomed, and that you belong here. So many people feel like they don't belong. And that belonging is because we feel disconnected from each other and from the earth. And it's like when we connect to the earth, it's like, and we keep that practice going, and we say like, ground into your name in the center of the planet, ground into the fact that the earth wants you here, the earth, you belong to the earth. And to
No,
really feel that on another level in your body, creates that belonging. And then from that place, when you have that bigger sense of belonging, it's easier to create that with others, because often that, right, everything that we see reflected internally is externally is somewhere within us. So if we're not feeling that sense of belonging, and there is that for many people who feel a different way of wanting to walk in community and in the earth, is the way of not belonging to this society, because this society isn't walking in a way that is in harmony with the earth. And so a lot of people feel that because of that as well. And so making those spaces, and to all those people, I just want to say, make more spaces with other people that share your resonance,
totally.
so that you can
Mhm.
create that field of change that we need.
And also it's like what you're telling this, it comes to me the witness consciousness, no? That sometimes that there's so many things going on in this world that we don't agree, and it's like, okay, I just don't want to be here, and da, 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 and it's so painful, and it's like, oh, just get it's so painful, I don't want to see it, no.
Mhm.
And it's not about, I mean, for me, this is my practice, and I practice to be more in the world, no,
Yeah.
about being here and what it is happening, I mean, what it is in your awareness, no, in your life.
Right.
uh, it's not like if you don't agree with something, no, this is what if I don't agree, and I just close
Mhm.
it, it's kind of in a way I'm pulling out,
Right.
my it's
Mhm.
difficult to belong if you just go like, okay, no, you know, you don't have to belong to that idea, but
No.
you can you can like observe and include it because it's in this part of it is in the world, no, like it's another of the trees.
Yeah.
Some of them with roots like this, other one like really deep, but we are, like you were saying, I love that, I love this that you said about the world, no, that we are, yeah, we're part of the world is the biggest container, I mean, it's like the huge womb, no, that we are here, tick, tick,
Yeah.
tick, no.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the universe too, but we need to ground in the earth to hold that universe womb as well. One of my teachers, he talks about the womb at the center of the universe, and that's another way of bringing, in a way, the goddess or divine feminine, that creational womb that we're all gestating in it, in this universe, and it's all being created through that energy, through that portal, and that women's bodies have a connection to that portal, and
Mm,
that we need to be able to sit in that pregnant potential, in that womb space that is empty but full, has everything it needs to create creation, but is usually, unless you're having a baby actively right now or birthing an idea, which we're doing that a lot, but to also sit in that silence, that place where it's nebulous, where nothing is created quite yet. It's just fluid and floating in that watery matrix, because bringing that energy to the planet and rooting that here, being grounded while we sit in that energy together as women, then we create more of a field where new things can be created and birthed on the planet. It's like we're expanding that womb consciousness. And that's what we need to expand in order for new earth or new world to be birthed. We need to create
mm,
that space, of holding for that to come through.
mm. That's beautiful. And that reminds me of how we started about the rebirth of the goddess. It comes full circle. It's this rebirth of the goddess and it is a new, like you were saying, there's this juiciness. I mean, there's emptiness that is like the potentials of,
Mhm.
everything. And like all, if we tap into and we connect through grounding this emptiness,
Mhm.
the potential that counts is like it's new,
Yeah.
it is new because you don't bring the past into it's just like just stay in that emptiness and that void and that like
Mhm.
n- you know
Yeah. And that void is a place in that womb space, and that cosmic space as well is a place where all nourishment is available. So it's, some people think the void, so I say empty fullness or pregnant potential, because
Mm,
everything is in there that you need. It's not like you're sitting in a void and you're
yeah.
nothingness, although
Yeah.
that can happen. And actually, I find that quite nourishing, and you might too if that takes a while to potentially, adapt yourself to being okay with sitting in that space. But at the same time, you're sitting in this nourishing fluid of energy that gives you life force and everything you need to exist in a really good way. And so we want to bring that consciousness and that field more onto the earth, so that everyone can partake in it, and it can create that space for the new earth to, be birthed from.
Totally. And this is one of the things that I see in you with your, these summits that you've been bringing
Mm-hmm.
to, here. It's a cooperation, but there's like this sitting in the pregnant abundance of nourishment, and just bring it out, and I welcome everybody to tap into Brianna's work, and the summit that she has created, and her work too is very nourishing. The word is like really that is, it nourishes, and yeah, and it's like infinite possibilities, it can come from there, and this is what is so cool. And that is like people together with that kind of like openness and desire of, just being present here, and bring something new, something else.
Yeah, and healing our, whatever we need to heal as women to make that space, because part of sitting in that space is there's often a lot of healing that needs to occur as well, healing of those wounds and everything as women, to really sit in that place. And all people can do that. It's just that I mainly focus on women.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is that when we are together, when we work in this together in the field that we create, and for us to see each other, the wounds that I have, my wounds are, maybe not, they're not exactly like yours, but they're similar. We're wounded. And when we are in these spaces, the healing, it happens is just faster, because we can see, we've been seen deeply, and to be seen deeply is really healing, as you know.
Yeah, that's often what wounds need, is just to be seen.
Just to be seen. Yeah, to be seen, and being like, let them, seen and arise, and there, and boom. So that's what is so powerful, being in community, doing this work. And it is one of the things that you do. And bring the goddess rebirth.
Definitely.
Yeah. So anything else you want to say to, because we're going to say goodbye at this moment with you, this conversation with Brianna Wonderland. You know what, like I always to your last name is like how you say your last name?
Yeah, Wonderland.
But for me, I used to say Wonderling, because it's like Wonderling. I like it. Yeah, Wonderland. So if I'll put a link of your latest offering, and maybe the summit, if it will be available, or a connection to your Instagram and Facebook, so people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, and people can check out that free gift of the summit interview with the meditation in it, and from Chalice and Well. And I just want to say thank you so much, Christina, for making this beautiful space, and really being that vessel, that openness to create this new emergence into the world, and helping women's voices be heard, and hearing your voice and hearing our voices together, right? Letting that arising and that co-creation. So thank you so much for doing this and being part of that movement. And everybody who's watching, you're watching because you're a part of this movement too. So just want to say you belong.
You belong. I love it. You belong. Thank you so much, Brianna.
Welcome. Thank you.
Mm.